Today's lesson is Meet Professor Sarah Gilbert, hero of the COVID-19 pandemic. Hi, everybody. Welcome to our program. My name is Roger.
And I'm Helen.
And today we're going to continue talking about our hero of the COVID-19 pandemic, Professor Dame Sarah Gilbert. Of course, we've got lots of heroes that we've read about in the pandemic, of course, but this is kind of one of the big stars of the pandemic, or at least one of the big stars in fighting the pandemic, fighting the evil virus, Professor Sarah Gilbert. And we did talk a little bit about her last time, didn't we, Helen?
Yes, we did talk about how she got started with creating the COVID-19 vaccine, how she got her start at the University of Oxford in 1994, where she was focusing on diseases such as malaria and the flu, diseases that cause major outbreaks. And it was from there that she gradually developed a vaccine that could be used and modified to fight all types of diseases.
Indeed. So we have talked a bit about her history and how she became one of the heroes of the pandemic. So let's continue to talk about her in today's program. So let's get to it, everybody. Let's listen to the first part of our lesson for today, and then we'll come right back to discuss it.
On January 11th, 2020, Chinese researchers published the virus's genetic sequence. It showed that the new disease was a coronavirus related to the virus responsible for the deadly SARS epidemic in 2003. Recognizing that developing a vaccine was going to be a race against time, Gilbert got started immediately, building on her previous work. Within a few weeks, her team had a usable vaccine for lab tests. In April, they were running clinical trials, and on December 30th, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine received final approval.
大家好，第一部分我们看到单字 sequence， 这个字是名词，指序列或是顺序。例如 These books need to be read in sequence because later volumes refer to things that happen in earlier ones. 这些书需要按照顺序阅读，因为后面那本的内容和在前面那本里发生的事有关。或是 The scientists are researching the genetic sequence of the new variants. 科学家们正在研究新变种病毒的基因定序。接下来我们看到名词 epidemic， 表示疾病的流行或是传播。例如 A flu epidemic has broken out in the northwestern part of that country. 那个国家的西北部爆发了流感大流行。或是 Scientists believe every 100 years or so there's a global epidemic. 科学家们相信每100年左右就有一个全球性的流行疾病。
So on January 11th, 2020, Chinese researchers published the virus's genetic sequence. We're talking about the COVID-19 virus, and it was on that day, on January 11th, 2020, Chinese researchers published or made public the genetic sequence of the COVID-19 virus. So first of all, the word sequence here refers to a set of things arranged in a particular order. So when you're talking about a genetic sequence, you're talking about the entire genetic makeup of a specific organism. So all of the basic, you could say, building blocks of that living thing. So Chinese researchers, when they discovered that people were getting sick and it was caused by a virus, eventually they were able to put together the virus's genetic sequence, which means all of the information that make up this particular type of virus.
Right, so it's basically the order of the genes. So again, a sequence is a series of events or steps in order to complete a whole. If you're studying a language, for example, there is a certain sequence that you follow. You start by learning how to write it, then you learn the basic grammar, then you learn some basic vocabulary, and then you get more and more advanced as time goes on. You follow a sequence. So here, of course, the genetic sequence was published in 2020, and it showed that the new disease was a coronavirus related to the virus responsible for the deadly SARS epidemic in 2003. Some of you might remember the SARS epidemic of 2003. That was relatively short. I was here in Taiwan at the time, and, we did have to wear masks and practice social distancing and stuff like that, but it came and went pretty quickly, okay? It was only about 2 or 3 months long, not like this nasty pandemic that we've been suffering through since 2020, basically. So they discovered that it was a coronavirus. Remember, corona is Latin for crown. So yeah, when you look at this virus through a microscope, it kind of looks like a crown.
Yes, and this new COVID-19 virus was a coronavirus, and it was related, or it is related, to the virus that's responsible for the SARS epidemic in 2003. So SARS is considered an epidemic, a situation in which a disease, SARS, spreads very quickly and infects many people. So SARS really spread in Taiwan, Hong Kong, and a few countries in Asia, but it didn't reach as far as the other continents in the world. So it's still considered an epidemic, whereas COVID-19 is considered a pandemic because it's a disease that has affected many people across the entire world.
And here in the next sentence, it says, recognizing that developing a vaccine was going to be a race against time, Gilbert got started immediately building on her previous work. Remember, she had that virus that was sort of the building block for other viruses. You just needed to make some modifications, and then you could use it to fight other viruses. So again, she got cracking. She got going because she knew that this disease was a race against time because COVID-19 is highly contagious. It spreads quickly. So yes, you have to act quickly in order to stop its spread. They didn't really stop it. It spread pretty much all over the world, but I suppose due to their efforts, it could have been much worse.
That's right. And a race against time is a situation in which something must be done very quickly. Otherwise, something bad might happen. So this is a very common phrase. You could also say that it's a race against time to try to look for the bomb before it explodes, because if you don't do it in time, then it's going to explode. And here, the word to build on just means to do something in addition to what you've already done. And as we've already mentioned, Gilbert was already working on a vaccine that formed the foundation for vaccines for other diseases. So she is building on that initial vaccine that she had worked on to make this new vaccine for COVID-19. So she's building on the work that she has already done.
Right, so she had already done her homework and had already finished some projects. So she built on that work. She was not starting from scratch. She wasn't starting at the beginning. She did not have to go back to the drawing board. And within a few weeks, her team had a usable vaccine for lab tests. So it only took a few weeks, and then her team of researchers and scientists and people like that, they had a vaccine that was usable. Okay, if something's usable, well, you can use it. It can be used in the human body to fight diseases. They probably did some animal testing first or something like that. And of course, you test this thing in the laboratory. Lab here is short for laboratory.
Right, and that's usually the sequence of events for the development of a new medicine or vaccine. First, you test it in a lab so that you don't harm humans. And once you find that this vaccine, this drug might work because all of the lab tests came back positively, then you can use it in clinical trials. And in fact, in April, they were running clinical trials. And on December 30th, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine received final approval. So everything happened quite quickly. And the vaccine worked, it seemed. So it received approval, which is official permission to be produced, manufactured as a vaccine for COVID-19.
It received final approval. Then they could start distributing it and manufacturing it to people all over the world. Okay, let's talk specifically about that vaccine in the next part of our lesson. Let's listen.
Two major benefits of the vaccine are that it is inexpensive to manufacture and easy to transport. When the University of Oxford partnered with drug maker AstraZeneca to mass produce it, an arrangement was made to ensure the vaccine would be sold at cost so that it would be affordable for low-income nations around the world.
第二部分我们看到单字 manufacture， 这个字是动词，指制造或是生产。例如 Celebrity gossip magazines usually rely on rumors to manufacture interesting stories for their readers. 名人八卦杂志通常依赖谣言，以便为读者制造出有意思的故事。或是 The former electronics company now manufactures toys. 该公司先前生产电子产品，现在生产玩具。接着我们看到名词 drug maker， 指制药商，像是Pfizer is one of the most famous drug makers in the world. Pfizer 是世界上最有名的制药商之一。也可以说 Some people tend to take medicine from specific drug makers. 有些人倾向服用特定制药商所生产的药。再来我们看到单字 mass produce， 这个字是动词，指大量生产。我们可以说 Jenny prefers handmade products to mass-produced ones.Jenny 比较喜欢手工商品，而不喜欢量产的。或是 That company mass produces its products, so their prices are lower than other companies. 那家公司大量生产产品，所以产品的价格比其他公司低廉。
So two major benefits of the vaccine are that it is inexpensive to manufacture and easy to transport. So these are two very important things about the vaccine that make the vaccine easy to use. First, it's that it is inexpensive to manufacture, which means that it doesn't cost a lot of money to make in large quantities. To manufacture something means to make something in large quantities. And usually things are manufactured in factories. So here, the vaccine is inexpensive to manufacture, so it doesn't cost a lot to make, and it's also easy to transport. So we are talking about a chemical substance, and when you transport chemical substances long distances, you have to keep in mind the temperature, and also perhaps you can't expose it to sunlight or move it around too much because it might not work because of it. So these are all things that you have to keep in mind when you produce a vaccine.
Indeed, I think the Pfizer vaccine had to be transported at really, really low temperatures. So here, the AstraZeneca vaccine was inexpensive, cheap to manufacture, and it could be transported relatively easily compared to other vaccines. And when the University of Oxford partnered with drug maker AstraZeneca to mass produce it, an arrangement was made to ensure the vaccine would be sold at cost so that it would be affordable for low-income nations around the world. So, of course, Professor Sarah Gilbert was working for Oxford University, where it was developed. And, of course, university is not in the business of manufacturing vaccines, so they had to find a manufacturer, so they partnered. They worked together with the drug maker AstraZeneca. They cooperated to mass produce this vaccine. Okay, so a drug maker, of course, is a company that manufactures drugs and medications and things like that. This particular one is called AstraZeneca. And, of course, because you need to make it for many, many people, you need to mass produce it. You need to produce it in large quantities.
So they also agreed that the vaccine would be sold at cost, so that it would be affordable for low-income nations around the world. When something is sold at cost, it means you sell it for the same amount of money that it costs to make it or to buy it, which meant that they didn't want to make any money from selling this vaccine. They wanted to make the vaccine affordable, not expensive for low-income nations, because these nations didn't have a lot of money to spend on buying vaccines, and they wanted to make sure that these nations were able to afford the vaccines so that the people in these countries could have the benefit of the vaccines and not get sick.
Right on. So, of course, affordable means you can pay for it easily. Lots of people like to buy Toyota cars because they're very affordable. They're not very expensive, but they are very good quality. They're affordable with good quality. And in this particular case, they sold them at cost so that it could be affordable for low-income nations in developing countries around the world because they were getting the disease as well. They needed a cheap way to fight it, and it would be beneficial for the rest of the world as well. Good for her, good on her, and all the good people at AstraZeneca. Okay, that brings us to the end of the second part of our lesson for today. Let's move on now and talk about the third part, and we'll wrap things up.
Gilbert and her colleagues' work has saved the lives of thousands upon thousands of people, and they are viewed by many as the heroes of the COVID-19 pandemic. But there is no time for celebration. The team is now trying to engineer the vaccine to help it fight new variants more effectively. As Gilbert points out, we've got to be better prepared for the next time, because, unfortunately, there is going to be a next time.
第三部分我们看到名词 variant， 表示变种、变异或是变体。举例来说 Coronavirus has many variants, such as alpha, beta, gamma, and delta. 冠状病毒有许多不同的变种，像是 alpha, beta, gamma 和 delta。或是 The most common way to create a new product is making variants on the original version. 创作新产品最常见的方式就是从原有的版本做些改变。最后我们看到单字 unfortunately， 这个字是副词，指遗憾的、不幸的或是可惜的事。举例来说 I'd like to come to your party, but unfortunately I have to study for a test. 我很想去你的派对，但不幸的是我必须准备考试。或者 I would love to buy this dress, but unfortunately I can't afford it. 我很想买这件洋装，但很可惜我买不起。
So we're going to wrap up our talk on Sarah Gilbert and her contributions to getting rid of the COVID-19 pandemic. Gilbert and her colleagues' work has saved the lives of thousands upon thousands of people, and they are viewed by many as the heroes of the COVID-19 pandemic. So indeed, Gilbert and her team, her colleagues are the people that she worked with, have saved the lives of thousands upon thousands of people. Here, thousands upon thousands means many thousands. So you can also say, for instance, hundreds upon hundreds to mean many hundreds, or millions upon millions to mean many millions. So this is just a way to phrase quantities to emphasize just how many you're talking about. And indeed, her work has saved thousands upon thousands or many thousands of people. And Gilbert and her colleagues are viewed by many as the heroes of the COVID-19 pandemic.
Indeed. So thousands upon thousands. You could also say thousands and thousands. They mean pretty much the same thing, although if you wanted to figure out the exact number, it would be quite difficult. Most people don't think that far. Thousands upon thousands just sounds like a lot of people. So indeed, that's the term we use here. Unless you want to really emphasize it, you could say millions upon millions or billions upon billions, etc., etc. And, of course, these people are seen or viewed as heroes of the COVID-19 pandemic, as well they should be, because they're trying to save the lives of everybody. But there is no time for celebration. Okay, so they cannot rest on their laurels. The team is now trying to engineer the vaccine to help it fight new variants more effectively. So we keep hearing about different versions of the virus when they kind of change into something else slightly, when they modify themselves to adapt to different kinds of people. Then those are variants, of course. So the Delta variant is the one we most often hear about, but there are others as well.
Yes, we've heard about the Delta variant and also the Alpha and Beta variants of the COVID-19 virus. So there are many different variants to this virus. virus. So they are working on a new vaccine to fight against these variants. As Gilbert points out, we've got to be better prepared for the next time because unfortunately, there is going to be a next time. So many of us might think once we get rid of the COVID-19 virus, that's going to be the end of it. We're going to be happy and healthy and we don't have to worry about pandemics anymore. But Gilbert is saying, unfortunately, that's not the case because we are going to have another virus or another variant of the virus. We're not finished with this yet. And she says this is unfortunate. She says, unfortunately, there is going to be a next time. And unfortunately is a word that you can use when you are about to say something that's sad or disappointing or that's bad news. And indeed, it is bad news to know that COVID-19 is not going to go away anytime soon or another type of virus is going to come and affect our lives.
Exactly. So unfortunately, there is going to be a next time in terms of a pandemic. There will be more viruses out there in the future. Hopefully, something will happen before that happens, like we'll get hit by a large asteroid or we'll be bathed in cosmic radiation when the poles reverse or something like that. So if something like that happens, then we won't have to suffer from another pandemic. Okay, that brings us to the end of our lesson for today. It's time now to listen to Hanny once again.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文一开始写到，在2020年1月11日，中国研究人员公布了病毒的基因序列，显示出这种新疾病是一种冠状病毒，跟导致2003年 SARS 流行病的病毒有关。文中它是用到 relate to 去表达跟什么有关。那我们这边就来学习它的不同用法。第一个 relate to 加上名词可以表达跟什么有关。那我们可以用被动语态 A is related to B 来表达 A 和 B 有关联。举例来说， I want to buy him a gift that is related to his hobbies. 我想要买跟他兴趣有关的礼物来送给他。那么第二个，我们可以用 relate to 加上名词去表达能够理解什么，对什么感同身受。这时候动词 relate 在这边是有理解的意思哦。那我们可以用 relate to somebody 或者是 relate to something 去表达能够认同某人或某事物，跟某人事物产生共鸣。举例来说， I can relate to her feelings 意思就是我可以理解她的感受，我可以感同身受。第三个，我们可以把 relate 当成叙述或是讲来解释，这时候这个动词就会相当于 tell， 不过呢它是比较正式的用字，我们用 relate something to somebody 来表达向某人叙述某件事。例如 The traveler related what he had seen to the villagers， 那位旅人将他的所见所闻叙述给村民们听。好，那么另外我们还可以用 related 这个形容词来形容相关的、有关的或是有亲戚关系的。你可以用 be related to somebody 去表达跟某人有亲戚关系。像你若问某个人说 Is she related to Emma？ 她跟 Emma 有亲戚关系吗？这样就可以表达咯。好，那么课文第三部分他提到说 Sarah Gilbert 教授呢和他的同事的工作成果拯救了成千上万个人的性命，而这个团队现在正设法设计疫苗来帮助他更有效对抗新的变种病毒。文中是用到 variant 来表达变种病毒，我们来学它的字根 VAR 或者是拼作 VARI， 这表示改变、变化或是使什么多样化。好，那在 variant 这个字当中，它的字根 VARI 表示改变， ANT 可以是形容词字尾或是名词字尾，我们把它结合在一起， variant 当形容词就是形容变异的、不同的、有差别的，那它当名词则是指变种、变异或是变体的意思。好，那我们接着把 variant 它的字尾 ANT 换成形容词字尾 OUS， 你会得到 various， 那只是形容各式各样的、不同的。再把字尾换作名词字尾 ATION， 你会得到 variation， 那这个名词则是表达变化、变动、变化形式。好，接着如果是在 VARI 这个字根后面加上 ABLE， 字尾 ABLE 是表达易于怎么样、容易怎么样的，合在一起 variable 则是表达易变的、多变的、反复无常的。好，那么以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾这些单字吧。
Sequence. The study involves determining the sequence of molecules that make up an organism's DNA. Epidemic. Taiwan's Central Epidemic Command Center has done a good job keeping people safe. Lab. Besides taking courses in biology, students are also expected to do some lab work. Approval. Our proposal requires the manager's approval before it can be put into effect. Manufacture. Simon works for a company that manufactures office furniture. Unfortunately, I have to stay late at work tonight to finish this report.
Discussion Starter starts now!
Okay, here's our discussion starter for our lesson today. And the question is, what does Professor Sarah Gilbert's achievements teach us in terms of solving the problem of pandemics?
Well, nothing can substitute perseverance and hard work, as Professor Gilbert's work has shown us. If you want to become expert in some things, as she is in viruses and vaccines, you need to put in the time and effort.
Well, based on Professor Gilbert's work, I can see it's clear that we must start working on these things as soon as we can. She read about this very early on and started working right then and there to stop the virus. It could have been much worse. So again, that's a lesson we can all learn. Start as early as you can. Well, everyone, today's article has come to an end, and I sure hope you enjoyed reading along with us. I am Roger.
I'm Helen.
See you next time.